The Beer Guys Radio Show On Demand is brought to you by Atlanta Brew Box, the experience of Georgia craft breweries with every box. Online at theatlbox.com. The Beer Guys Radio Show, Saturday afternoons at 1 on Atlanta's AM 920, The Answer. Streaming to the world at beerguysradio.com. Proudly broadcasting from the AM 920 studios in Buckhead, Atlanta. It's the Beer Guys Radio Show, the only radio show in the South dedicated to art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer. Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Aaron Williams.
And it's the Beer Guys Radio Show once again. I'm Aaron Williams.
I am Tim Dennis.
Welcome back to the show. And we have got a great show packed for you today, jam-packed of things, and it is the sour power stuff going on today. It's exciting. Tim, how you doing?
Beers. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We're talking to Jason Pellet from Orpheus, President and Brewmaster. How you doing today?
I'm doing great today.
Great. They feel like you're a little bit medicated, but that's okay.
I am medicated. I'm about to get more medicated.
That's
the
true.
right thing.
That's part of the show here.
Right now, it's just allergy medicine.
We will we'll apply liberal amounts of medication here.
That's right. And we've got the censor button on, so we're okay with that. Anyway, we've got a really busy show for you, and we'll get right into it. Truck and Tap's Beer of the Week. I brought, speaking of Orpheus Brewing, Atalanta, their Tart Plum Saison. That's what we're going to be drinking today. Tim, what'd you get?
I have a variety this week.
Cool.
So
I
brought a few
variety
in.
Is good.
So I have a beer we tried on our first show, Bread-O-Matic.
Yes.
It's in bottles now, so I bought some Bread-O-Matic in. I have a Belgian beer. And Jason, you help me with the pronunciation on that one. Girardin?
That works for me.
Okay. All
Goose.
Right. A goose. It's a goose, right. Girardin Black Label Goose is one of our options. Jason, you brought us a beer. Maybe will be one of our beers of the week.
I brought some Even the Furies Wet.
That sounds great.
That is fantastic.
Awesome. Excellent. So, that's what we got.
Looking forward to that, absolutely. Now, usually this is the time of the show where we kind of like to ease into things, tell us what we drank to kind of have a good time. But news of the week, of course, if you haven't heard, the quote-unquote compromise of the Georgia beer bill was reached earlier this week, and not a great compromise, quote unquote. Tim, why don't you let us know what the details are?
They're being very liberal with the word compromise.
Quote unquote compromise, yes.
That's, some of the media outlets around town have been, reporting this as a victory, saying people worked well together. A deal was reached, has been mentioned many times. And this really doesn't come across as a deal with what was given. So basically what happened this year, just to give a little rundown of what went on. There was a beer bill that was written by the Georgia Craft Brewers Guild, and that was going to be sponsored by Representative Stevens. Fairly aggressive bill, looking for some really good things. I use the term aggressive, but I only use that term because of the three-tier system that we have here.
Yeah, it's nothing that anybody wouldn't think it was normal in any other state besides us.
Basically, it was going to allow a business to sell the product they made. Was the big thing.
That is crazy talk right there, Tim. Stop
That's mind blowing.
It's I don't know if it's safe. It's out of control there. Beer at breweries. So I said on Twitter, what's next? We're going to be able to buy bread at a bakery. It's just
the world will collapse upon itself.
So
is that allowed in Georgia?
I don't think so. Only you have to go in and you buy a tour of the bakery, and then you get a free loaf of bread. But the loaf of bread cannot weigh more than 36 ounces. So
yeah, and it can't be sliced either. So yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's just rules to prevent really dense loaves.
I think so.
Very important.
Light, fluffy loaf. So crazy stuff. But what did happen with the deal that was reached is the biggest part is breweries were given back what they'd already fought and won for last year with SB 63. The biggest thing was the ability for breweries to sell tours at variable pricing, which was what was won with SB 63 and went into effect July 1st. At the end of September, the DOR issued a policy bulletin that killed that. No more of the variable pricing on the tour. So took away what they'd already run. That's really important to note, that this is already going through legislation, been voted on, was awarded and implemented, taken away. In addition to that, they'll allow breweries to host special events, breweries and distilleries to host special events, allow brewers, distillers, and wholesalers to use social media to tell people where to buy their product. The important thing there to note is, see, Marquis squinched his face up when I said that. I know why. Yeah. Because that was illegal before.
Exactly.
You couldn't, if someone went on your Twitter or Facebook and said, hey, I really want to get your beer. Jason, if someone went on there and said, I need some Atalanta, what could you say?
I could say it's in your best local stores.
That's right. You check your favorite local package store. See, so couldn't even tell someone to get that. It's considered a thing of value that could be showing favoritism to a retailer, which is not allowed. So that will be allowed now. Yep. So that's good. Allow third parties to sell tour tickets, and allow breweries and distilleries to sell food on site. Now, I haven't seen exactly how that's been interpreted yet. That looks like that could have some potential, depending on how that's implemented.
Sure.
So,
I don't see much potential there.
well, that's unfortunate. Okay, so
I mean, it's nice, but we're not going to put a kitchen in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you make sandwiches? Maybe you could make some sandwiches and sell them.
We don't make sandwiches.
No, that's
you
make beer,
right? I love cheese. Maybe we'll sell some cheese.
There you
we'll
go.
See.
Okay.
But I do have to note on the second item, special events, the deal as it stands now, unless it's changed as far as I know. Because I do have to say that when Martin leaked this to the AJC, the deal was not done. This was actually confidential at this point, and he thought this was a winning thing for them, so he would go say, we all agreed to this and it was great.
Right.
That's
yeah.
We don't
want to get you in any trouble or anything like that, Jason. So let's just.
I've been trying to talk and get some additional information. And people that normally speak to me and give me a lot of information are saying we still need to be fairly quiet on this.
Sure.
Because this isn't solidified.
But what I will say, the deal as I know it now only actually says that the Department of Revenue will look into us being able to do special events. Okay. It doesn't say we get to do them.
Right. Well, we were going to have another guest with us this week, Taylor Harper. He's a Georgia craft beer lawyer. Taylor had a meeting, an appointment that he had to take care of, and unfortunately wasn't able to be with us. But he wrote an article, and Deal or No Deal. Check that out on Georgia Craft Beer Lawyer. And he goes into a lot of this, some of the questioning of whether or not some of this is even implementable under the current laws.
Yeah, and, hopefully we'll get him on in a later show, either next week or the week after that. But, since the Brewers and the Craft Guild can't really talk, let's do the talking for them. Here's the deal. Direct sales still prohibited. So, again, what we joked about earlier, literally no brewer can sell the beer or sell their product, or distiller for that matter, to the end customer. So, Marquise, Tim, we can't walk into a brewery saying, hey, I want a 6-pack of your beer and walk away with it like you would do any other manufacturer. And let's reiterate this. We are one of 2 states that don't allow that direct sales. Alabama is the other one, and from what I've been reading,
Mississippi. I'm sorry,
Mississippi. Okay.
Alabama allows limited pints on site, but no to go.
But both of those states are looking at laws where they will go ahead and bring that direct sale to it. So congratulations, Georgia. We are now going to be behind Alabama and Mississippi, and we are the only ones that do not allow a simple business transaction to take place with the end customer.
Maybe that'll get some movement.
That is absolutely ridiculous. So. And you know what? And listen, I was kind of vocal on this about Twitter, and we've been vocal on this before. I will say it again. I invite any Georgia lawmaker who supports this current system to come on to explain. We'll take your call. We'll be respectful. I just want to hear it. But right now, their silence speaks volumes to me.
Absolutely. It's and even not necessarily silence. So some things that went on with this. Yeah. We had some fairly powerful politicians that made comments leading up to this about supporting Georgia business, and that there's some information we received from an anonymous source, didn't want to be named because of the sensitivity in the information. But what we're told, the reason this deal happened is from the governor's office and from the speaker, that they were basically told, if you present your bill, it's not going to go anywhere. Yeah. We're going to make sure this bill doesn't go anywhere. And they were put into a situation where, I was told Stevens backed off sponsorship. That may not be the best way to put it, that he was put in a position to where he was told his bill would not go anywhere. And if it's not going to go anywhere, then they were forced into a situation. I talked to a brewer that told me this was not a deal. This was a curb stomp by a well-paid hitman.
And here's the thing, and a lot of these brewers and a lot of the people in this industry are speaking on condition of anonymity for a reason, because here's the deal. The distributors and the brewers, basically the distributors own the brewers because they are the only source of income and revenue that they can have. So if you anger one of your only distributor, you have no other recourse. You basically sign a lifetime contract. So if these brewers are saying some things that make the distributors mad, well, guess what? They can just kind of taper off and not sell it to them, and there's really no recourse except if you want to take them to court for several months. Mm-hmm. And what brewer has the money to operate like that?
How ridiculous is it that we're in a system to where a business owner can't openly talk about the rights of his business without fear of hurting his business.
It is absolutely ridiculous. And again, we are talking about jobs. We are talking about money. This is not a beer issue. This is a business issue. And we are getting our butt kicked, frankly, by North Carolina and South Carolina. So when jobs of millions of dollars in tourism revenue, and again, hundreds, if not thousands of jobs are going to North and South Carolina, well, thank you, Georgia legislature, and thank you, Governor Deal. That's all I have to say about that. Anyway, listen, we're going to stop now and do some more fun stuff. Actually, we're going to get Jason back on the mic, and we're going to talk some sour beers. We are going to talk about their process. They've got a lot of sour beers. Hopefully crack open what he has brought today. Later on, we'll talk to the guys from Creature Comforts, so keep it here. You are listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We will be back after this.
Want more Beer Guys? Follow Tim and Aaron on Twitter at Beer Guys Radio, Facebook, Instagram, and online, beerguysradio.com. The Beer Guys are back after this.
It's Aaron and Tim, the Beer Guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock is always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy. They have 12 of them. Bottles, too. Not sure what to drink? All of their beer servers are Cicerone certified. And if you got someone who isn't a beer fan, not to worry. Truck and Tap carries wine, mixed drinks, and even handcrafted sodas.
As for the truck part, well, that's when it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks daily. That way, you're getting a different menu every day.
Check it out. Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock. Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the Beer Guys sent you.
Don't forget to drink local and drink Georgia. Now, back to the Beer Guys.
All right, welcome back to the Beer Guys. I've had a break. I can calm down now. I'm good.
Got to stay worked up on this.
I was fired up, Tim. I definitely was. So we should be. There's a reason to be fired up.
Yeah.
So before we kind of get into our interview with Jason from Orpheus, anything that you would like to add to the conversation to wrap the whole things up, or anything you can say?
Can I quote you on that?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that can be quoted.
That can be quoted. Okay.
Okay, good.
One thing real quick I do want to cover that's Marquise actually had a question, when we were at our break here. Asked Jason about the restaurant being there and selling beer, talking about brew pubs. And, Jason mentioned to him that, yes, you can have a brew pub with a restaurant. You can have 50% sales. You're limited to the number of barrels you can serve. Mm-hmm. Another thing we really need to note here is brew pubs, again, got nothing here. So, they can use social media.
That's exciting.
So they got they're allowed to use Twitter now.
Yes.
So congratulations, brew pubs, on your victory over the Twitter war.
Yeah, and speaking of, by the way, next week we're going to be talking to the always interesting Crawford Moran from 5 Seasons on the West Side, and then John Roberts from Max Loggers about the brew pubs going on there. So that'll be some very interesting talk. So
let's move on. We could talk about this forever. Jason took his time to come in here in the studio with us. We're going to talk. We're talking sour beers this week and we've just opened a beer that Jason brought for us today. Even the Fury's Wet. Jason, I don't even know if I need to take a sip of this. I'm just enjoying the aroma, but why don't you tell us a little bit about this beer?
All right, so this beer, this is a blend of a few different Sauterne barrels. And if you don't know, Sauterne is a sweet French white wine made from the grapes infected with noble rot. Mm-hmm. And so I usually don't tend to like wine barrel-aged beers when you actually get the wine character. I like old wine barrels where the Brett actually breaks down all that character. But for whatever reason, the Sauterne character, even when this beer, now at this point, this beer is 16, 18 months old. But even when this beer was very fresh in the barrel, it was delicious Sauterne character. Or this is a blend of several. So anyway, this was a blend of several, and this was blend 1. We're actually, our first wild bottle release is going to be blend 2 of this.
Okay. When's that coming to us?
We're going to be bottling that in a couple weeks. That'll be bottle conditioned until May. So that'll probably that may come out at our anniversary at the end of May.
Awesome.
So, we take our time with our sour beers. We have, so people know about our big release sour beers like Atalanta. If you come to the brewery, you see that we have a large barrel program, but there's been most people that haven't had really much of anything from those barrels. I mean, we started filling them almost a year and a half ago and basically just let them go. That's what these beers take.
And you had a little road trip this week that's going to expand that barrel program even more, right?
Oh, yes. I was in Kentucky. I got actually stuck in Louisville for an extra day. That wasn't for the wild barrels, though. That was, we've spent the last few days filling bourbon barrels with our Imperial Stout, the 12th flavor.
Yeah.
We also have a whiskey barrel sour, the Minotaur, that a lot of these barrels are going for. But while I was out of town, we had a shipment of 80 wine barrels that we actually, this is an exciting week to talk about sour beer at Orpheus. We've spent the last 2 days doing turbid mashes for lambic type spontaneous fermentations. Right. I have turbid wort in my cool ships right now that's going into barrels in the morning.
What's a turbid mash, Jason?
A turbid mash is basically a super complicated mash. The whole point of it is to get as much a combination of some really fermentable wort with some very hard to ferment wort, so that the Saccharomyces, the main beer yeast that does the initial fermentation, quits after all the easy to ferment sugars are gone and leaves a whole bunch of starches for the Pediococcus and Brettanomyces at the end of a very long 1 to 2 year long process.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some other things like this. So there's we start with a ferulic acid rest, so that just to get some ferulic acid, you can get that out of all grains, but it's a precursor to some phenols that the Brett breaks down into some very characteristic esters in lambics.
Now, see, Aaron's mentioned to me before about going too geeky on some of this stuff.
Yeah, we went a little bit geeky there.
This is over my pay grade, Aaron. So it's,
well, listen,
but it's fascinating stuff.
It's great.
I'm trying to say this quickly. I mean, I
sure,
can break it down more, but I don't want to bore people either.
No, it's great. Jason Pellet, the president and brewmaster of Orpheus Brewing here in Atlanta, is with us right now. Let's kind of go back a little bit. You've got a vast amount of knowledge about this. What got you started into brewing?
What got me started into brewing was really I got into sour beers. I distinctly remember my first sour beer, March 18th, 2009. It was at the Brick Store, had a Duchess, and it was just, I guess it was life-changing.
Yeah.
I didn't know it would be so life-changing at the time. I just knew that was totally different than what I had drunk before, and just started on this quest. And that really, if you think about it, that wasn't that long ago.
No.
Started brewing. So really got obsessed, going to beer bars, trying to find this, buying as many sour beers as I could, kind of studying it, and eventually just getting frustrated with the fact that I couldn't. Well, I was a trumpet player at the time, so even if I could find them, Cantillon, this was the golden age of sour beers in Atlanta, where there were a lot available. Cantillon was lining the shelves at Greens, if you can imagine.
And of course,
that.
Cantillon is a popular Belgian beer, one of the great Belgian beers.
One of the greats. We can't get them in Georgia anymore at all, but even if you go to places you can get them in the U.S., you're looking at spending $100 a bottle
easily.
Noteworthy that the reason we cannot get these in Georgia is another piece of drama of our 3-tier system.
Awesome. So,
that's true. Yeah, the importer that brings Cantillon in wanted to change distributors in Georgia. To do that, they had to pull out of the market for several years.
Wonderful. So there you go. Another nice law that we can have the Cantillon. So what's your background? You said you were a trumpet player. Did you have a background in science or anything like that doing this?
I didn't. No, I have a master's in orchestral trumpet playing.
That's perfect.
Translates excellently.
I mean, that's exactly what you want to open a brewery.
I have a journalism major. I feel your pain. So
you play
the
trumpet to your fermenters, right?
I actually hardly touch my trumpets anymore. But that kind of training does teach you the kind of, I mean, this is, everything about the brewery is very detail-oriented. I mean, I don't know if I really look at it going into anything, I don't know what I'm doing. So I have to be able to analyze it from every angle, every different direction. And that's what, classical music training really teaches you. How do you approach this little thing from every possible direction, see every different way of seeing this little problem?
That's, I've said before, brewing, to me, it's kind of like part science, part art, and a little bit of luck and magic in there.
There's all of that in there.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, you've certainly turned your luck and magic into quite a successful enterprise. Congratulations, by the way. You had your 1 millionth can, I kind of feel like Dr. Evil when saying that off the line this week.
So you got to put your finger up there.
Exactly. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Now, you have, again, talking about your love for sours, you also have a couple of other, I guess you'd say, non-sour beers in your rotation. Can you tell us about those
For
as well?
sure. We actually we've been doing rotating seasonal IPAs since we opened. But we just released this past week our year-round IPA, which is just our third year-round beer. We've been, since we opened, we've had just 2 saisons as our year-rounds. And so now actually getting a year-round IPA is probably a game changer. We'll see, I guess. They just went to the distributor today. So,
well, congratulations. That's awesome. So we're looking forward to seeing that on shelves as well.
And that's out in draft now.
It's draft now. It's called
soon?
the Rights. Yes, cans are on order. We've been waiting. Another regulation thing in Georgia, we were waiting over 2 months for Department of Revenue to actually even approve our labels for us to do this. So we had to wait until they approved it last week to order our cans.
Yeah, so just to remind the Department of Revenue, I believe, has to approve the labels before anything is canned or bottled and put out before they can put it to market. So, so we're talking to Jason Pellet, the president and brewmaster, again, of Orpheus Brewing here in Atlanta.
So, Jason, I know that we've actually talked about this a little bit before, but your branding is very unique. The name of your brewery, Orpheus, the names of your beers, the artwork. Tell us a little bit about kind of the inspiration and this backstory there.
So the backstory was really, all right, so I was trying to, and this is just, at the time, this was never going to be really anything but a fantasy brewery. But, fantasies are, they're fun to have. So I wanted to name my home brew. And I knew that the beers that I was making, I had already decided. So I had brewed Atalanta, or the beers that would eventually become called Atalanta and Lyric Ale. I had brewed those and thought that could be the core of a brewery. And so I knew that was different than most of the breweries around as far as what the beers were. So I thought the, name of the whole ethos around it was different. And so as a trumpet player, there's this jazz standard called Black Orpheus, and I've actually always just loved the name. Yeah. Like I had no initial tie to the mythology or anything. It was just the name. And then I started exploring it, and it was just, there was so much there to just feed off of. Like when I was, I did a lot of compositions, and I would just number my compositions, and that doesn't work with beer. Here's beer number 1.
Beer 327.
Hop Experience 2, you have some
well,
of those
okay,
too.
so we still did a little bit of that.
Yeah.
I couldn't totally get away from it.
Yes, that's right.
But
excellent. Yeah. Well, Jason Pellet, thanks for joining us. We're going to talk to you a little bit later, but first we are going to talk to the guys from Creature Comforts about their souring program. Stick around, the Beer Guys Radio Show. We'll be back right after this.
Hey everybody, it's Scott from Bird Hickory Brewery in lovely Kennesaw, Georgia. You're listening to Beer Guys Radio, Georgia beer for Georgia people.
Georgia radio for Georgia beer.
This is Tim and Aaron from the Beer Guys, and here's the deal. You've got that one friend, that one you can never shop for. He's got all that cool stuff. Yeah, that guy.
Well, we found something that they don't have, but they're going to want. The Atlanta Brew Box is a Georgia craft beer experience to go. Each box contains tour passes, a t-shirt, and a bunch of other swag from our local breweries. It's fully customizable, and starting at only $40, it's a great gift idea.
It's unique, it's fun, and it is Atlanta. Head to beerguysradio.com, click the link on the right-hand side of our webpage, and that will get you there. It's the Atlanta Brew Box, the Georgia craft experience in a box.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the show. We've been speaking with Jason Pellet from Orpheus Brewing. Earlier in the year, we spoke with the team from Creature Comforts. We had a nice long interview there, so long we ran out of a little bit of a time, but we're doing a show here on sours this week, Aaron.
Yes, we are.
We're going to work that back in, and we're going to hear from them here what they had to say about their sour beer program. Today we are speaking with Blake Tyers from Creature Comforts. Blake, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Great. Thanks again for joining us. So, we just want to give a little primer here kind of on sour beer. As Aaron mentioned, it's quite popular, continues to grow in popularity, and everything from kettle soured to long-term barrel aging and that. So could you just give us a brief rundown, I guess an overview of sour beers and kind of what Creature Comforts works with there?
Yeah, absolutely. So generally when we're talking about sour beers, we're talking about beers that have acid acid-forward flavor note to them. So they're going to have a nice acidity, and they're going to be tart. We tell a lot of people to think about like warheads or lemon heads, things in that world. They're going to have some acidity in there. There's a lot of culinary influence there as well. A lot of people cook with wine or vinegar and things like that, and it's very similar to taste profiles you're going to get with that. The way we are making beer have acid is with bacteria. So we have a couple different kinds of bacteria. We call them lactic acid-producing bacteria as a group. And what they do is eat sugars and produce acid. I think the key for us and what we really focus on at Creature is learning how to really work with those organisms so that it's going to be a nice balanced acid beer. We want to have nice acidity to it, but we don't want it to be overwhelming. Kind of always throw it back in discussion. We will say early 2000s double IPAs where it's kind of this race to make everything as bitter as possible. And we're seeing that a little bit in the sour world as well, where people are just trying to make very, very, very acid-forward beers. And if you've had our Tropicalia or our Athena, you know that that's not really kind of our style. So we're working on trying to learn our best to figure out ways to produce a nice finesse with the acidity that complements the other flavors going on in the beer as well. And Tim, you kind of hit it on the intro, is that the problem, or not the problem, but the interesting part about where we are with this is that there's everything from a sour beer like Athena that we can make in 3 weeks to beers that take up to 3 years to make when you start looking at like Belgian Gooses. So right now, for us, that learning curve is a lot longer, obviously, on the barrel-aged things, and we're working on trying to understand those processes better and learn how to balance that acidity and really make it a nice, lovely beer that's got a lot of cool flavors going on. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we educate people as we talk about it and realize that, there's a big difference between this 3-week-old Berliner Weiss or this 3-year-old Goose. And the flavor profiles and respect to the process is very important.
Now, Blake, one of the things that one of the yeast that you use is the
Brettanomyces.
Brettanomyces. See, look, this is why Tim's here, because I can't pronounce things. That's very important for me.
Brett. There you go.
Brett. I like to say Brett, and that makes it easy. Talk to me about some of the popular microbes and yeasts that are used in sour and funky beers, and kind of what the different profiles is of each one.
Sure, yeah. We use, so in the lactic acid-producing bacteria world, you've got Lactobacillus and Pediococcus. Those are the two main ones that are going to be providing most of the flavor for an acid-forward beer. They work a little bit differently depending, and they're also very much species-dependent as well. So some Lactobacillus strains will be very, very aggressive and will sour up in the high alcohol range and through hops as well. But traditionally, Lactobacillus is a little more stunted in growth by hops, so that's the way we kind of keep it in check. Pediococcus is a longer-term, slower-working bacteria, and it bounces out with hops as well, but it's going to get there eventually and keep working for a longer period of time. Pediococcus pretty much has to be used in tandem with Brettanomyces, which is the yeast. Pediococcus produces an off flavor that the Brettanomyces actually consume. So without those two working together, you're not going to have a super tasty beer. Brettanomyces, though, while it's often grouped in these sour beer categories, Brettanomyces by itself does not make sour beer. It's just the yeast, and while yeast do produce acid during fermentation, it's not enough that we would call it a sour beer. Any yeast, like brewer's yeast, Saccharomyces, that you would find for your IPA or whatever is going to be producing acid as well. So
I know a lot of the
we try to separate that a little bit.
I know a lot of the Brett beers, you'll hear the term funky, as opposed to sour.
Yeah.
I know that can be kind of a broad term, but in general, that's a fairly good descriptor for a Brett beer, correct?
Yeah, it is, and it's something that we've been really kind of talking around about the brewery quite a bit. Is we don't call all stouts sweeties, and we don't call all IPAs bitters and things like that. And there's this general lump of sour beer category, and we haven't really quite figured out how to develop the new vernacular to express the differences in all these little minutiae, like here's a kettle soured Brett beer, or here's 100% Brett beer, or here's a mixed fermentation saison, or here's a lager that goes through a barrel aging process with all sorts of bugs and all these different things. So we've kind of been looking at how we talk about it and learning how maybe we can convey the right message to the consumer so people understand what we're doing.
Well, that's and using that as an example, I mean, even within Brett, the various strains can produce different characters, just like various hops can produce different characters. You can get a totally different beer with different strains of Brett as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny because we call Brett right now, a lot of Brett beers we're calling wild ales. But Brett is becoming very domesticated very quickly. There's many, many labs that we can order Brettanomyces from and several strains of them. We're constantly discovering new strains of both Brettanomyces and wild Saccharomyces. So it's a very moving new science and landscape for beer making. And you can make pretty clean-tasting beers with isolated Brettanomyces strains, and you can make beers that are super cool and fruity, and you can make beers that are very, very funky and kind of what people refer to as like that barnyard horse blanket flavor, kind of the classic old Brett. So just depending on how you do it and what strains you use, you're going to get a lot of different variety.
Now, talk a little bit, just to give a quick rundown of some of the beers that you do along those lines. You mentioned the lactobacillus, like the kettle, the quick souring. You have the Athena as well as Paradiso variants. One of my favorites, the guava passion fruit, which every time I see that, I like to get some of that. Some of your wild ales, you have the Curious and Emergence. And I think I saw recently Emergence is actually going to be coming as a bottle release soon. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we've got Athena that we make year-round in cans. We do variations on Athena, usually with fruits that we call Athena Paradiso, and we've done multiple fruit varieties for that one, and we hope to continue kind of explore that series over the next year. And we want to try to get them in cans as well because it's just a little bit easier for people to grab that package when they can see it. So that's something we're working on. Then we've had some bottle releases like Dayspring, Southerly Love, Brettanomic. All these kind of play in that world. And then we're working on barrel projects that are coming into fruition now. So we've got Emergence, which is a beer that spent time in wine barrels for about a year. We're very happy with that beer. It's got a nice balanced tartness, beautiful wine character from the barrel. It's just a really exciting beer for us. And then we've taken a few select barrels of that and aged it on different fruits that we found from local farms that we work with to produce some new Curious beers for us. And the Curious beers are a series of beers that we can experiment with kind of small batch stuff to really do things that we're passionate about and kind of interested in, but also take some chances and some risks. But luckily so far, knock on wood or your barrel, they've all turned out really well. So coming up, we're hoping to be able to release some of those Curious beers. So far, we've just poured them at special events and festivals and things like that. But we'd like to get those in the hands of consumers as well. So we got some cool stuff coming on the pipeline for that. And really, the Curious series is all kind of our pilot program or kind of our test program for what we hope to be expanding on as our barrel program. Within the next year, we hope to get another facility where we can lay down a large amount of wood barrels and do also some stainless mixed fermentation beers and try to make that a more robust and common thing you see from us that can get into the market so people can have more of those flavors from us because it's certainly something that we're passionate about.
Man, we've got about a minute left. Why don't you talk a little bit more about that sour facility that you've got planned and how you expect to work with it and maybe make some expanded offerings when you have it built?
Yeah, it's all very much up in the air right now. We're hoping to find a place here in Athens. We're doing some site selection right now, and then we want to get a few hundred barrels in there. We also want to get some medium format, like puncheons, or about 500 liters. And then we'd like to get some larger format wooden vessels like fooders in there as well, and some stainless tanks so we can do a range of kind of quicker, meaning maybe 4 months-ish mixed fermentation beers to really long-term projects where we can do, our 3-year beers and things like that. So we hope to be able to really define that by working with local farmers and developing a true house culture of mixed fermentation, bacteria and yeast to really kind of give it a Creature Comforts flavor. So that you can kind of understand who we are and what we taste like, and that as we go forward, that we're not just kind of another sour beer on the wall. We really want to try to do something that's special to us.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, give us a little information on sour and funky beers and what we can expect from you here in the near future.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Great. Thank you. And we'll be right back talking about what's going on in Georgia beer. We're going to have more with Jason Pellet from Orpheus Brewing as well. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show, and we'll be right back.
You are not me. The things
Beer guys know. More after this.
It's Aaron and Tim, the beer guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock is always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy. They have 12 of them. Bottles, too. Not sure what to drink? All of their beer servers are Cicerone certified. And if you got someone who isn't a beer fan, not to worry. Truck and Tap carries wine, mixed drinks, and even handcrafted sodas.
As for the truck part, well, that's when it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks daily. That way, you're getting a different menu every day.
Check it out. Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock. Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the beer guys sent you.
Home brewer? We want to know what you got on tap. Give us a call. 678-861-8ALE. Now, back to the beer guys.
And you're listening to the Beer Guys radio show. I'm Aaron.
And Tim.
Tim is over there, too. Hey, we've got a giveaway to talk about. We give away free stuff around here once in a while. What's going on?
We have got a new sponsor. Actually, they've been a sponsor for just a little while with us, ATL Brew Box. And we need to give away some of their products.
It's the Georgia Craft Beer Experience.
In a box.
In a box.
That's right. So the ATL Brew Box is a mix of tour passes, T-shirts, stickers, swag from Georgia breweries, and all bundled up together for you.
Yeah, very cool idea.
And we want to give some of them away.
Yep.
So go to our website, go to beerguysradio.com, sign up for our newsletter. And what our newsletter is it's the weekly This Week in Georgia Beer. We're not going to spam you. We're not going to hammer you with stuff. Once a week, we'll send you a newsletter Friday mornings telling you what beer releases have come up over the last week, what may be coming up events-wise the next week, what to keep an eye out for.
Yes.
So sign up for that.
It's right there on the very top of the website. It's got 3 boxes. You just put your name in there, sign up, and then you'll be entered to win that ATL Brew Box as well.
First name, last name, email, and you're good to go.
That's all we need.
And you'll
exactly.
be entered in there, and we'll announce our first winner on next week's show.
Sounds like a plan. Hey, speaking of, what's going on in Georgia Beer this week?
Georgia Beer this week. So today there's actually a few nice releases. We've got 3 Taverns Heavy Bell. That's having a brewery release today.
Not Heavy Bells.
Not Heavy Bells, singular. Heavy Bell
is
very critical. So we have Red Hair Evolving Hair Citra, which is their new seasonal rotating IPA. It'll rotate each season with a different focus hop. The first one is a Citra. We have a Wake and Bake Off on Sunday, which is the second round of that. And we have Red Brick today is doing a barrel-aged vanilla gorilla.
Nice.
This is brewery only. You got to go out there and get it. So if you're listening now, head out now. Listen to the rest of the show in the car.
Or on demand, exactly. That's a great beer, too.
Is that bottles or just draft?
They're just doing bottles. They're doing bottles. They're going to have some on draft, a couple of the variants on draft for sampling there. But then they did bombers of a couple. I know they've got a Buffalo Trace barrel. There's a cognac barrel that's super limited. So you have to go get you some of that, Jason. Super limited beer.
I may do that.
See? Yeah.
Sounds good.
And then another beer to keep an eye out for, Southbound Rocking Chair, which is an Imperial Nut Brown Ale. So that's what we've got going.
Great. Hey, if you haven't heard, by the way, Jason Pellet, the president brewmaster of Orpheus, is in the studio with us. And just want to talk a little bit more about what's going on with you guys. You know, Orpheus has always got a unique look out there. You know, you see the cans. They've got white labels with different colors and some really unique artwork. Can you tell me about how you design your cans and that type of thing?
So the initial thought was actually when this was still, like I was talking earlier, just a fantasy brewery, I was teaching trumpet lessons to Sam Parker's kid, Conrad, cool kid. But Sam is my favorite Atlanta artist. And in my fantasy brewery, Sam did all of our art. And so I think it's actually cool we expanded beyond that. But Sam, he's the one who did all of our seasonal IPAs, Transmigration of Souls, Peace, War, Truth, Lie, Life, Death, Life, Truth. He's actually a tattoo artist. I'm showing the guys. I'm sorry you can't see this. He's tattooed a couple of these on me. So, and kind of going from that look and just expanding and just keeping everything, you know, these are all, not all, but mainly tattoo artists, graffiti artists, that kind of thing.
It's a very cool look and definitely very unique. So if you are in your local liquor store or bottle shop, you can definitely tell the Orpheus from the other ones as well. Hey, you just opened up a beer.
I did just open the beer. So I opened Creature Comforts Bread-O-Matic.
Yes, you did.
And that's when we drank on the from the growler on our first show when we talked to Creature Comforts. They've got it out in bottles now. And we ran short on glasses, but Marquise was very fond of that one. And He had to break out the styrofoam. So Creature Comforts, don't be offended when he's drinking his styrofoam. He had to do it so he could have some. So,
I'm almost ashamed to admit it, though I did it with Dan, their salesperson. When I drank See the Stars, it was out of styrofoam cup.
I remember seeing a picture
room.
of that. That's the proper glassware hashtag.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Exactly. So with Bread-O-Matic, again, it's got a little bit of that bread on there, that funk taste to it from Creature Comforts. Jason, what do you think about this beer?
Oh, this is nice. The awesome thing about Brettanomyces as a yeast is that you can take it in a couple different directions. You can use it, and this is a much more recent development of using it as a primary fermentation yeast, where it has more characteristics of a normal ale yeast, except much fruitier in general. That's where all that fruit character here comes from. Like, as opposed to even the Furies Wept, where there was that funk there. A lot of that came from when Brettanomyces is a more secondary yeast. It has to work harder, and it gives off much different flavors.
Definitely,
so this is a very nice. This is a very nice version of a kind of primary fermentation with Brett.
It's interesting to me. I'm having this in the bottle. We had it in a growler a couple of weeks ago. I'm getting a lot more funk to this than we did before.
This is generally understood that to really get Brett character to come out, it needs to be bottle conditioned.
Interesting.
You really have to undergo the secondary fermentation in the bottle.
And it's awesome to see if you have Brett beers, like a beer like this, you want to buy a few bottles of this. You want to try one now. You want to put a couple in your cellar because they develop, they change, they get deeper, more intense over time. It's really interesting to see how Brett beers change.
They do. Though I do have to say that when you do the primary with Brett, the kind of fruit character you get when it's fresh actually leans more towards funk as it ages, and you lose some of that fruit.
Now, Jason, we do have a couple of folks, or many folks actually, who are home brewers, Tim, of course, being one of them as well. Do you have any tips for any of the home brewers out there if they want to get into sours?
I'll say so. Sours is a sometimes misleading way of describing beers. Wild is also a little, there's not a great term.
Yeah.
So
we really haven't developed that yet in the beer community, or at least not over here. The sours are used to generalize a lot of beers that are not clean.
Exactly. And so I will say within that broad category of basically beers that don't use your standard ale and lager yeast, that use some combination of Brettanomyces and or bacteria.
Okay.
That's what usually gets described as sour or wild, even though there's some overlap and it doesn't quite work. But Brett is actually fairly easy to work with. You can take just about any beer, and after you've fermented it, add some Brett. And there's a few different strains that work really nicely. You can take, and I love Brett, especially in pale beers, but it works in darker beers too. So that's probably the easiest way to get into the wild thing is ferment just the norm. Especially, I mean, it works great in saisons. It works great in hoppy beers. So just after your normal fermentation is done, add some Brettanomyces. Getting into a more mixed fermentation, there's a little bit more complications, but I mean, the big things to do is just you have to because mixed fermentations just take so long. So all the things you have to be careful about with oxidation and stuff like that, you just have to be more careful for because this goes longer.
Okay.
I actually did a homebrew saison with Brett, and it was a Brett blend. It's for the homebrewers WLP, I believe it's 670, which is a standard sack strain.
Is that the American Farmhouse?
It is American Farmhouse. Yep, sure is. And I left that in primary, I guess, about 4 months, and had a big pellicle, the thick pellicle on it, and I transferred it, bottle conditioned it, and it's about 11 months old right now. And it's got a nice funk to it, a lot of pineapple, whatever strain it is. The fruit in that is just really popping in that one. So it's good. And it was simple, I quarantined that carboy to be a funky carboy going forward, and really enjoyed making that beer.
I mean, I have to say, to get a pretty good wild beer, if you're patient, willing to give it the time, isn't that hard. Obviously, there's some things you can do to step it up, but if you just do it and let it sit and let it go for Let it go for a year, and you'll be surprised what you come up with.
Where's a place that people mess up with sour beers?
I mean, I think the big thing is not being patient enough. I mean, I think that's the big thing with not just home brewers, but kind of American breweries and like professional breweries in general. There's so much what I think is, first I'll say there's a lot of great sour beers out there, but there's a whole lot of kind of disappointing beers where I think that would have been good in a year. But it's released, it's just churned out fast. And I think patience is really important. That's why, we haven't bottled anything from our wild program. And we've had, we're up to, we're almost 18 months in, and we're just about to bottle the first beer from our wild barrels. It's this patience.
Patience is good. Jason Pellet, the president and brewmaster of Orpheus Brewing, with us. Just a couple of minutes right now left. Jason, real quick, we usually try to talk about what we drink over the week. Did you have anything of note this week drinking?
I had a lot of bourbon.
I knew
Good for you.
Oh, my God. I was because like I said earlier, I was in Louisville last weekend and got snowed in.
That's a crying shame.
Went to Heaven Hill and picked up a bunch of Heaven Hill barrels. And I don't know if I should say this, but these Heaven Hill barrels had a lot of bourbon left in them. So we've been filling 12th labor into these barrels, draining the bourbon out first.
Well, sure.
So we have barrel strength 10-year Heaven Hill.
That's fantastic.
Just been filtering it a little bit.
So Tim and I are coming over after this.
We're
to
going
sample
over
this.
for bourbon after all this.
You won't regret it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we're wrapping up the show right now. Thanks again so much for Jason, President and Brewmaster of Orpheus. OrpheusBrewing.com is the website. Just look for the white cans with the funky line art. You will not be disappointed. Now, next week on the show, we are going to talk brew pubs with the always interesting Crawford Moran and John J.R. Roberts from Max Lagers. Brewing from 5 Seasons West Side, right?
We'll be at 5 Seasons West Side, recording on site there.
Yep.
Talking with them about brew pubs and the special challenges that those guys face.
Yeah, beerguysradio.com. We'll have details there. Maybe you can come by and check us out.
Say hi to us.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan. Anyway, we'll be on the socials. And don't forget, enter that giveaway for the Atlanta Brew Box. Beerguysradio.com is where you go. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Miss a show? All shows are on demand on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow Tim and Aaron on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Beer Guys Radio. Call the AL line at 678-861-8AL. More Beer Guys coming up next week. Same time, same place, same tap. Till then, here's to you.
This is Tim and Aaron from the Beer Guys, and here's the deal. You've got that one friend, that one you can never shop for. He's got all that cool stuff. Yeah, that guy.
Well, we found something that they don't have, but they're going to want. The Atlanta Brew Box is a Georgia craft beer experience to go. Each box contains tour passes, a t-shirt, and a bunch of other swag from our local breweries. It's fully customizable, and starting at only $40, it's a great gift idea.
It's unique, it's fun, and it is Atlanta. Head to beerguysradio.com, click the link on the right-hand side of our webpage, and that will get you there. It's the Atlanta Brew Box, the Georgia craft experience in a box.